Erev Tov, everyone. Tonight and tomorrow is Asara B'Tevet. So I just want to remind everyone that our custom here in Eretz Yisrael, according to the Rabbanut Rashit, is that it's a day of remembrance for the Shoah as well. And it's the Yom HaKadish HaKlali. It's the day that everyone says Kaddish in memory of the martyrs who died in the Shoah. So after Maariv, when we finish Aleinu, it's time for Kaddish Yosom. The entire tzibur should recite the Kaddish together. Tomorrow again for Shachrit, and tomorrow again for Mincha. Rabbi Goldberg gave a wonderful shiur, a Shabbat in the afternoon, about the 8th and the 9th and the 10th of Tevet. Mentioned in Halacha. So then today, the 9th, was the day that Ezra HaSofer died. We know that from the Slichot that we'll say in the morning. And tomorrow is Asara B'Tevet, which is the day of the beginning of the besiege of Jerusalem in the first temple. The 8th, there are various reasons advanced, but the Shulchan Aruch says a strange thing, that it's the anniversary of the death al misha lo noda, of an anonymous person. It's the yahrzeit of Mr. Anonymous, and we commemorate it. So how can you commemorate a yahrzeit of somebody that's anonymous? And what lies behind that? So Rabbi Goldberg discussed it, and there are numerous interpretations. I want to share tonight with you something that I preface as being well out of the box. But I heard it many years ago from a very great Torah scholar, Professor Schneier Lyman, who was the head of Jewish studies at Brooklyn College. He was a professor at Harvard. He's a great Talmud Chacham. He's also a descendant of Reb Shraga Feivel Mendelovitz. He has, he's really a Renaissance man. He has everything all packed into one. So he has an article, and I heard a lecture that he gave on this topic, Al Misha Lo Noda Misha, on who this anonymous person is and why would they make a yahrzeit and what does it represent. When Christianity first began, it began as a Jewish sect. All of the members of the sect were Jewish. All of the people involved were Jewish. And it was at a time, the end of the Bayis Sheni, where there were many sects. There were the Tzdokim, the Sadducees, who denied Torah Shabbal Peh. There were the Isim, the Essenes. There were sects that lived in the desert. in caves, that were celibate, and all sorts of things. So Christianity began as a sect of Judaism. And the original Christians were convinced, because Christianity as we know it today really begins in the year 90 with Paul. In the first 50, 60 years of it, they don't see themselves as a separate religion. And because of that, therefore, they constituted a grave threat to Jewish life, because they brought into Judaism all sorts of pagan and non-Jewish ideas and goals. So Chazal wanted to distance us from them. In other words, Chazal were interested that there should be a separation. Judaism lives on the fact that we can make separations. Mavdil ben Kodesh l'chol, ben or l'choshech, ben Yisrael l'amim, ben Yom HaShvi l'sheishes ha'mayamase. Mavdil is the Ikar Bracha by Klal Yisrael. I mentioned to you often that Meir Shapiro, the Lubliner Rav, when he was asked what his impression was of American Jewry when he returned from visiting the United States in the 1920s, so he famously quipped, he said, American Jewry knows how to make Kiddush, it doesn't know how to make Havdalah. And that, unfortunately, is a very, very accurate description. So Chazal instituted a bracha, the 19th bracha that we have. The bracha is really Lamini Malti Sikva. Min is the term in the Talmud for the early Christians. They were called Minim. And later, the term has been expanded to include all non-believers. So the litmus test of the person was whether he would recite that bracha or not. If he recited the bracha, then we could say that he was a loyal Jew. If he refused to recite the bracha, then we had good grounds of suspicion that he was a min, and he should be excluded from the community. The rabbis never debated Christianity. They debated the Romans on paganism, but they never debated on Christianity, because merely debating that already made it Jewish. So they went to great lengths to try and separate themselves from the early Christians. The early Christians came to shul every day. They didn't have a separate, church minyan. They came to the regular minyan. And they attempted to infiltrate and convert the Jewish people to Christianity. In the main, they were unsuccessful. That's why Paul took it from being a Jewish religion and made it a non-Jewish religion. And he said the emphasis has to be not on the Jews, but rather on the non-Jewish world and the Roman world, which is really where Christianity sprang from and had its greatest number of adherents. So there are legends, and I emphasize the word legends, about early Christianity and the Jews. And a whole series of legends. It could very well be that none of the legends are true, because legends have a tendency not to be true. However, when there are a whole bunch of legends about it, so as my Rebbe said, it's shmektzach, there's something is there. Can't tell you what it is. So for instance, one of the legends is that the great prayer of Nishmas Kol Chai was written by Peter, who did tshuva at the end, and he wrote that prayer, that tefillah, and we recite it every Shabbos and Yom Tov. According to the Christian history, Peter was executed in Rome by the Romans, and he was the first pope. So obviously the legend different completely. So there was a legend that that Chazal purposely infiltrated the original Christian hierarchy to convince it to separate itself from Judaism. So some say that even Paul was, so to speak, a secret agent to force that to happen. But in Jewish legendary, it is said that one of the great Tanoim infiltrated the Christian world, pretended to be a believer. He had great influence upon them, and that because of that, Christianity turned away from being a Jewish sect into becoming a non-Jewish religion to the rest of the world. So Professor Lyman's theory is, and he has many things that allude to it, I don't want to go into it, but his theory is that that's the person who passed away on the 8th of Tevet, and Chazal called him Mr. Anonymous, but they wanted to give him his due because of the great contribution that he made to the Jewish world, that he separated us. Again, the idea of Havdalah appears over and over, and Ato Hivdalta, our prayers begin. So in order to perpetuate that memory, which could never be written down because it's too dangerous. So therefore, the Shulchan Aruch makes a reference to it, that it's a yahrzeit for someone that remains anonymous. But anonymity is always hard to achieve. And therefore, there have been many ideas who to ascribe this to. This was Professor Lyman's take on the matter, which is quite interesting and which would have consequences even until this very day. But again, tomorrow is the Yom HaKaddish, Klali, and so we will all say Kaddish together. Chananya ben Akash Yomer Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakas Yisrael Lefichach Hirbo Lahem Torah Mitzvos Shenemar Adonai Chafetz Aman Tzidko Yagdil Torah V'Yadir.